Michael Saylor was asked in an interview how important it is to own 0.01 Bitcoin. That's equivalent to about 1,000 US dollars that you would need to invest in Bitcoin to own 0.01 Bitcoin now. The answer would really shock you because Michael Saylor talks about how it's important not just as an investment, but also as insurance against a falling fiat money system. He really reveals many noteworthy points here. And afterwards, I'll give you a little assessment because the clip is really highly explosive.
According to some research, about 50 to 60 million Americans own Bitcoin, but there are so many people in the world who don't own any Bitcoin. How in like 50 to 60 million Americans own Bitcoin, according to some research, yet there are so many people in the world who don't own any Bitcoin. Today you can get 0.01 Bitcoin for $1,000. It used to be cheaper. How important is it for somebody to get off zero and accumulate that first 0.01?
Well, I think everybody that has a long-term capital plan, if you have a portfolio of assets, or if you have money that you don't need for 4 years, I think the reasonable thing to do is you want to have some portion of it in digital property, in digital capital, that's Bitcoin. And I think 1%, 2% is like an insurance policy. I mean, it's like, it's not going to, you're buying an insurance policy so you won't be totally wrecked. 10, 20, 30% would be like a nice allocation, right? If you had a third of your assets in Magnificent Seven stocks or high quality companies, and if you had 20 or 30% in real estate or some kind of high quality collectibles, you want to figure out, what do you want to give to your grandkids? What do you want to retire on? Something scarce, desirable that you want to hold, that you think that someone wealthier than you, more sophisticated than you might want to buy from you 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. If you think about it like that, then I think Bitcoin definitely ought to be part of that portfolio. I mean, everybody's got to decide what percentage of their portfolio. But at this point, we've moved past the point where you would be thinking that the government's going to ban it or take away from you. You're just buying digital property.
So would you say there's almost nothing more important if you have zero Bitcoin than getting off zero and getting that first 0.01?
Look, if you're a mega billionaire, if you're Warren Buffett, I guess it's not really that important to him. But I think if you're middle class, like if you like money, if you want money, there's nothing more important. It's the future of money. Money, me defining money as long-term store of value. You know, I mean, you're not going to get rich by holding currencies in your pocket. You ought to minimize the amount of currency you hold. But if you want to get rich, the time-tested way to get rich is levered long property. You buy scarce, desirable property, and that will preserve your wealth. The way you preserve your wealth is you buy scarce, desirable property. The way you get wealth, the way you create wealth, is you borrow the money from the bank to buy the property. So rich families, it's like, I'm going to buy $1 billion of real estate, but I don't have the billion. So I managed to figure out how to borrow 900 million. And then I went and I raised another 70 million in equity, and I got a 30% promote. And I ended up, when the dust settled, with 30% of $10 billion worth of real estate. And I made $3 billion because, you know, I got highly levered. So I think finding a way to get scarce, desirable property and lever into it is how you get rich. If you want to stay rich, then you want to buy something that's going to appreciate faster than the monetary inflation rate after taxes. And that means that's why you can't store capital in bonds, because no bonds will give you more than the inflation rate after taxes. That means that your best bet is, you know, you pick the next NVIDIA, but, you know, good luck, right? It's like you got to pick one out of 500. Maybe you grab a, you know, portfolio of Mag 7 stocks and maybe you can beat. But otherwise, if you're not going to do that, then Bitcoin is the best idea. Look, I think Bitcoin is plus 60% a year for the past 4 years. The S&P is plus 5%. The Mag 7 is like plus 25 to 30%. You know, this is not complicated rocket science. The monetary inflation rate, it feels like it's 10% to me. So, you know, should you, if you don't care about money, then I guess it doesn't matter. But if you care about money, if you want more or you want to keep the money you have, the hurdle rate, for practical purposes is 10%. And the conventional approach is you buy S&P 500 index and you beat it by a little bit. And then real estate's not that good, because with real estate, you're probably growing less than the 15% and you're getting property tax. And the property tax is a killer for you over time.
Any advice for people entering Bitcoin today?
My advice for people is Bitcoin's digital capital. It's, in 100,000 years, we finally came up with perfect money. Every economist that ever wrote on the topic for, thousands of years, they never had it. Satoshi created it, brought it to life, January 3rd, 2009. It took us 15 years to figure out whether it was going to work. Now it looks like it's working. You will work 100,000 hours in your life as a student and as a laborer to make money. Given the fact that you're looking at 50 years of hard labor as a student and as a laborer, and given 2,000 hours a year and the 100,000 hours, I would say a rational thing to do is invest 100 hours to figure out how to keep your money. Right? You're going to invest 100,000 hours in making it, spend 100 hours figure out how to keep it. If you don't understand what Bitcoin is, if you don't understand why it's better than seashells or buying NASDAQ stocks, or why it's better than investing in bonds or currencies or real estate or random artwork, if you don't get it, if you're afraid of it, don't put your money in it because I say you should. Put 100 hours into it. You put 100,000 hours in, trying to actually make money, and you'll probably die poor or die without any if you don't ever figure out money, because the system is constructed to take all your money away from you unless you get really smart about economics. So what I ask for people is, put the time in, spend 100 hours. I mean, you probably spent that much trying to figure out how to pitch a baseball or drive an automobile, right? I mean, nothing done or nothing meaningful is achieved in life without a 4-year commitment, a 1-year commitment, a 100-hour commitment. And so I'm not telling you how to live the rest of your life. I'm just saying that the part of your life which needs money, that's worth 100 hours. So
This is really a great clip that you can definitely forward to a beginner or a newcomer. Michael Saylor has very clear words here, but he also has almost warning words, because he clearly says, hey, only get involved with Bitcoin if you want to become wealthy. Only get involved with Bitcoin if you want to become richer, if you want to have a better life, if you want to have a better quality of life. Because that's exactly what Bitcoin is about, that a Bitcoin gives back self-sovereignty and also preserves your purchasing power. And he clearly says it's important to engage with it. That means it's not enough to just buy Bitcoin, otherwise you'll just make panic sales. You really have to engage with it. That means feel free to subscribe to the channel here. It's completely free, but it helps to spread the Bitcoin message. Share the video with your friends, because not everyone understands. Sure, many of you watching here understand it inside and out. You know exactly, hey, you shouldn't let yourself go crazy by setbacks and whatever. But it's really important here to engage with the topic in a relevant way. And very, very important, he actually explains quite simply how wealth works. And that means it is not some kind of rocket science, but you earn money, put it into rare or, let's say, assets that maintain purchasing power. And according to Michael Saylor, what is the best asset here? That's quite clear. Bitcoin. He also recommends leverage, meaning that you invest with leverage. He also says that wealth and assets are always created through leverage. So when people find a good store of value and invest in it with leverage, I wouldn't pass that on 100%, because the question is also whether you want to take that risk. You want to, because leverage also means stress. Sure, if you're MicroStrategy and can somehow borrow at 0% interest, that's a different story. But many people might not sleep so well because of that. And I would say the leverage story, everyone has to evaluate that for themselves. But he definitely says, don't buy currencies, buy hard assets. And the hardest asset is here, Bitcoin. And that tip can definitely be passed on to everyone. And that's why there's a big recommendation here. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below for you to 21 Bitcoin, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin, and very easy, simple. Here, with the code, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Let me know what you think about the massive statements from Michael Saylor. See you then. Peace out.